now. Thank you. So I'm going to hand over to Paul, just to give us an overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Great. It's great to see everybody, and still lots more coming in by the looks of it. So fantastic to meet you all. Hopefully you'll have some questions, which is always a high point. I firmly believe in two-way interaction rather than just listening to someone. But I'll maybe give a very quick spiel on my background and some key learnings, and hopefully that will spur on some questions as well. I actually started at the BBC when I was 13 in local radio in Nottingham, working on various programs across the BBC local radio output. I became the BBC's youngest reporter, I think, at 13, interviewing people for a weekly business program that I presented on the breakfast show. Very young, caught the bug early. Actually followed my brother into the BBC. He was a BBC correspondent, and I think I probably caught the bug from him. And it's not something you want to admit these days, catching a bug, is it, from anyone in a COVID pandemic? But when you relate it to 30 years ago, or whatever, it was a different time. So I started really young, and during my teenage years, I actually went into the BBC a lot. I was welcomed by some brilliant people there, who became mentors to me, who were presenters on local radio. And so even during my O-levels and A-levels and that period up to university, I was working pretty well 2 days a week, effectively, at the BBC at weekends, helping with the sports program on a Saturday, and really learning from a very young age how broadcasting worked. And that was invaluable for me. From very early on. Then I took a year off where I worked for the BBC pretty well full-time as a freelance reporter across Radio 4 and Radio 1 and BBC Local Radio. Then I went to university in Manchester and managed to carry on working for the BBC, unusually presenting the morning sports bulletins on the breakfast show for BBC Manchester, and then also becoming the BBC's Olympics reporter as a freelance, which was amazing. So that was during my university career. So I really caught the broadcasting bug very early on, and then came out of university, was lucky enough to be offered a staff job by the BBC in London, and worked at the BBC for pretty well another 7 or 8 years as a presenter and reporter across business programs, television and radio, news programs. I was traveling all over the world. That probably got me excited about travel, and really loved working as a journalist and investigative reporter, interviewing lots of chairmen and CEOs. So I was learning all the time about their own strategies and interviewing them about their strategies, and everything from M&A activity to how they treated their people to what their passions were in their businesses. And it gave me a fantastic grounding in many different sectors, not just travel, which I went on to specialize in, but also across energy, financial services, legal, healthcare, many different business areas. And that was an invaluable grounding for just teaching me about the real world, really. And that's my first tip. Get as much experience as you can whilst you are learning not just about your sector, but maybe other sectors as well, because there are so many things you can learn from what others are doing in other sectors. So then I decided nearly 30, at the age of 30, to leave the BBC, just because I felt like there was a danger I'd become dead wood in the organization if I stay there for a lot longer. And it's a common thing you hear from BBC people, that there's too much dead wood around. And the same in many companies. And I never believed in staying in one company for too long. So I left the BBC to go and work for a software company, a FTSE 100 software company, and get experience in-house in its PR team, but still responsible for writing, which was my editorial expertise. So I was able to mix those two and stayed about 3 years in that environment. And that taught me a lot about the stock market, financial services, business journalism as well. And was a very exciting time, but it wasn't exciting enough for me working in a software environment. I'm afraid my mind is more creative, very much geared towards running a creative business. So I went to work for Eurostar, as communications director, I was headhunted there and built up the Eurostar brand over the next 4 years or so, and relaunched it because it had been through a bad time. The trains were always late, they were dirty, it was slow, it wasn't a high-speed service people were proud of. The French were laughing at the British for not providing such a high-speed train service. And I loved it. It was a brilliant team to work with. Had some great mentors within the business, and that's my tip number 2. Make sure you find good mentors around you, even if not in your own business, because it may not yet be big enough, but in other businesses that you work with. And that's vital to network and learn from other people in other sectors. So at Eurostar, I had a fantastic marketing director boss who was my mentor, called Nick Mercer, who was brilliant and taught me a lot about running a business and running a team. And I built up my team at Eurostar, which I think was around 7 people at the time, built it up to about 10. And then after about 4 years at Eurostar, I was lucky enough to be headhunted again. So headhunting is a bit of a theme in my career. Headhunted again by, in this case, Richard Branson, of all people, who rang me one day and said, would you like to come and work for me at Virgin Atlantic? He'd seen some of my work at Eurostar. And then I went to work for him. You don't say no to Richard Branson, do you, really, when he rings you up and says, oh, come and work for me. So I did actually keep him waiting, I think, for the weekend. He rang me on a Friday. And I said, can I ring you back on Monday and think about it? So I kept him stewing for the weekend just to try and get more money out of him, really. And he still offered me the job, luckily, on the Monday when I said yes. So I was at Virgin Atlantic as communications director for nearly 5 years, representing the airline around the world, being an ambassador, launching new routes, working with internal and external comms teams. I launched Virgin Atlantic's social media, because back then in 2007, it was still fledgling. Not many people were using Twitter in those days. And basically learned some really key things working for Richard Branson. I would say 3 key things, actually. First of all, always say thank you to your staff. Staff never hear the word thank you enough from their people, from their managers. They never hear it enough. And too often staff complain, in the years they work in a business, that someone who was their line manager barely said thank you. It's one little word that means so much to people. And you don't have to say it every day, but even twice a week makes a massive difference on how your teams feel. Secondly, have lots of ideas. Really important to keep the ideas flow going in a business, because that's the creative spark that everybody needs to flow off. Richard was someone who had lots of ideas. Some of them were bonkers. Some of them didn't work. Some of them I'd say to him, you're crazy. But if you don't have the ideas flowing, you're never going to grow your business. You're never going to change it. You're never going to turn it around. You're never going to inspire new people to join you. So always have lots of ideas. And even if you're on your own, brainstorm with friends and family about ideas. Brainstorm, how you can really improve your business with others who are not so closely linked to it. But if you have got a number of team members working with you, I never say for you, I always say with you, because they're partners in your business, then it's really important to brainstorm constantly and discuss lots of ideas. I think the third thing is, sorry, some builders outside have decided to start being noisy, always the way. The third thing is that you actually always check in with the people around you constantly. So not just thanking them, not just sharing ideas with them, but just checking in to see how they are. So it might be a new starter. If you're lucky enough to have a new starter in the business, always check in with them each day and see how they're doing. Is there anything you can answer? It might be you check in with them and ask them how they are if they've had a family loss, or it could be that you check in and ask them how they are if they've, had some success in a competition, maybe outside of work or something. Just share with them and let them share with you, because it creates a much stronger relationship between you as the manager or boss and people who are working with you. So those, I think, are the 3 key things I learned from Richard and have really helped me in my ongoing career. I left Virgin Atlantic in 2010 I was a non-executive director of a large PR firm called Lewis PR. I went to work there as their chief operating officer to help them grow further for a year and a half or so. And then I did a management buyout with my number two in the business to create the travel consultancy that is now the PC agency. And here goes the noise. They always start when you're least expecting it. Hopefully you're still hearing me okay.
We can.
And they, and so I did a management buyout, built up the business, and now the PC agency today is about 20 people. We specialize in travel and tourism. We specialize in hotels, airlines, tourism boards and destinations, cruise lines. And we've had a roller coaster of a pandemic, I would say, like many businesses, and touch wood, we've been pretty successful. Sadly, I had to furlough a number of the team in March last year. We had to lay off, sadly, 3 people, but we've built back more strongly since, I'm pleased to say, and are hiring and have hired many people recently to get back to around 20 people where we were. So we took a bit of a dip and then have come back, and we're stronger than ever, I would say. And actually, many of our clients stayed with us, which I'm pleased to say. And we've helped them, of course, during the pandemic. And for travel and tourism, the pandemic's been very, very difficult. Government policies have been tough towards the sector, obviously with lockdowns. You only have to look at Australia and New Zealand. They haven't even let their people leave their countries. Here, obviously, we've had a tough border policy with ambers, greens and reds doing the rounds. And it's been tricky, to run a business. And a lot of companies in the travel and tourism space have been trying to survive. They're not making even profit. They're trying to survive. And that's been very tough for many CEOs and leaders, obviously, across those businesses. I think the lessons from March last year, when the pandemic struck, were really interesting for me. And I think they're things that everyone should take away. Should we have another pandemic? Should we have another major crisis? And they are, when a crisis occurs, sadly, you have to take action and take it quickly, but cut hard. In a business, generally, it's all about conserving your cash, moving into the unpredictable period ahead. And obviously the pandemic has been totally unpredictable. So in future, always make sure you cut where you can, as fast as you can, and as hard as you can, if you think your sector is being affected by a crisis. And if something's unpredictable, because you need to conserve your cash. And it's the worst thing ever, obviously, to tell people you have to lay them off or you have to furlough them. It was not a pleasant day. And it's tough on anyone that runs a business, because you're invested in that business, you're passionate about that business, you care about that business, and you care about the people you're working with. So it really was a very tough choice to have to make. So I think the learnings there were cut hard, do it quickly, do it further than you want to do, because it's easier to rebuild. So, better to cut as much spend or cost as you can so you conserve cash. And then I'm pleased to say, we've built back more strongly. We've won more clients. We've been very visible as an agency in picking up on government comments where they're wrong or factually inaccurate. And that's been important for the sector and giving them advice. And the team have built a much stronger relationship as well because of hybrid working. So we've fully adopted that. Luckily, everyone can work from home. We've helped them financially with money towards their energy bills, especially during the winter when it was more costly for them to work from home, and that went down well. We did team events, such as pizza making on Zoom and gingerbread house making and stuff like that. So we've really made the team part of the experience to help their mental health and help them get through the pandemic. And I'd like to think that they, have done the best they can during the pandemic, during what's been a difficult time. So that's where we are, really. Hopefully, Joe, that's in a nutshell the experience I've had, and hopefully you can answer questions.
Sure, thanks, Paul. I wanted to know, as a Times reader, obviously they've had these red, amber, green travel list countries going, and it's not just, you know, in the past couple of weeks, they've been going throughout the pandemic, even last summer, and you managed to get your you know, your name literally against these lists. How did that, you know, from a PR or marketing perspective, I guess, how did you manage? Did you create this, or how did you get to be so associated with that list?
It's a good question. So last summer, obviously, we had the travel corridors created, and countries were put on the corridor list on and off at short notice, and it obviously caused a lot of distress and heartache for a lot of people who were on holiday and found that they had to suddenly get back within 24 or 48 hours at short notice to avoid quarantine. So I thought to myself, why don't we create what I called then a traffic light system of countries that were green under what I believe was the government's criteria, which countries were amber and which were red. And it worked really well in just showing consumers how safe their countries were or other countries were not every day, which we updated it during that period. And it became pretty popular because it was highly accurate. Consumers could see, we knew what the data was showing on countries. And then I had a call one day from the European Commission who said, we want to take your idea and introduce a traffic light system for Europe, which they then did in November last year. So that was gratifying. And then obviously the UK bounced along this year eventually and came up with a traffic light system, which frankly has been much criticized because they, as we saw last week, have ignored their own rules about the system and moved Portugal, for example, at short notice from green to amber, causing chaos for consumers. So they haven't introduced the system as well as they should have done. But we have been associated with it throughout because we have morphed part of our business into more data. So we focus on a lot of data in travel. And we hadn't done that before. And everybody wants data these days. All the data that existed pre-pandemic is inaccurate and out of date because consumers have changed. So we focus on a lot of data gathering through market intelligence, market research, and our own analysis. And that's why I think we've become a go-to consultancy for many media, because they trust our insight and intelligence, and we own that space. And it's a good lesson for anybody in business. If there's something that you're an expert on, or half expert on, and there's no one else around you think doing it as well, then own it. Be bold and confident, own that knowledge and expertise in your sector, and in some cases give your insight away for free, and it will bode well for your business. We've given so much pro bono advice. It's bona fide as well, but so much pro bono advice, and it's helped because we've won clients off the back of it who've respected our insight and knowledge, and the media certainly respect it. And to be fair, I think we do have much better knowledge than even the government does on how travel and tourism works, judging by the policies they put in place. But I will be fair to the government as well. It's a very tough period. Nobody would want to be a minister, and they have a nightmare of a job, so it's not easy. But there needs to be more consultation between government and the private sector, that's for sure, so they don't land themselves in such a mess in future.
We've had a few questions come through, so I'll go to those. I mean, this could be, this is from Paul Scott, needing a crystal ball. Do you see travel coming back before September?
Good question. Very good question. Do I see travel coming back? So I was just checking. My Wi-Fi seems to have gone off, but hopefully you're still hearing me.
Yeah, we are.
Do I see it coming back? Yes, absolutely. And I think it will come back in August. I think we'll see some pockets, some green islands emerge again at the end of June or early July. Malta should be on it. Some Caribbean islands should be on it. Finland should be on it. There are many examples of countries which are safe. So I think we'll see a few emerge. But in terms of the mainland European countries like Spain, Italy, France, Greece, and even the USA, I think that's more likely to be end of July, early August, I'm afraid, much later than many of us wanted. But we've got a government which is being extremely cautious. They're nervous. They don't want to go back into any form of lockdown. And as some of you may be seeing in other sectors, with the lockdown due to end on the 21st of June, we will see that watered down. We will see some measures still go ahead, like opening up weddings to more than 30 people. But the June the 21st lockdown will be stretched, I think, over a longer period into July, because the government is nervous about opening up too quickly still. They want more people vaccinated. That's their mission. They want to get the job done on the jabs, say that everybody's vaccinated, and then they'll be less cautious.
And there's a kind of extension that David asked, which I think you've already kind of asked a little bit about, answered a little bit, in terms of comparing the need to protect public health through border controls. But are you in favour of a digital passport? And will it achieve, protecting public health, do you think?
I'm in favour of the the NHS digital certificate that's on our phones. I think that does work well, because it shows straight away your vaccination status when you enter another country. But certificates are better than a passport as such. Passport is not a good thing because it suggests a lot more information being handed over. The key thing about the NHS app is it's a certificate that just shows your vaccination status and nothing else. It doesn't tell people in another country what your medical record is, for example, or where else you've been, which a passport does show. So I think a vaccination certificate for each journey is the way forward. But you can't discriminate against those who haven't been jabbed for medical reasons. And therefore you have to continue to do testing. Testing is vital as well. So it's a combination of things that we're going to see over the next few months and potentially years, because of course we've moved forward a lot on digital efficacy, not just in travel, but elsewhere. But it's great in a way that we're seeing so much digital usage, because the travel industry needs to really improve on digital seamless technology to help us move from one country to another.
Are there any, given we're talking about innovation in this conference, are there any examples of kind of digital innovations that you've noticed from travel businesses?
Yes, I think there are two really. One is related to the certificate, in the fact that businesses and airlines especially are now using their own apps to link digital health certificates with their own boarding passes on their apps. So the two are talking to each other, if you like, and information is being shared from your vaccination record through to the airline, but the data is not stored at all. So it is literally a transfer for that journey you're making. I think that's pretty advanced stuff that they've been working on and now are rolling out. The second, and that helps us all, because frankly, if I just hold on to this and show my boarding pass and vaccine certificate at the same time, I'm not having to hand over any paperwork. I'm not losing any paperwork in a back pocket, and nobody is necessarily touching the phone. I'm just showing a QR code. I think secondly, iris technology is terrific and is really moving apace now. It's obviously in use at Heathrow and Gatwick. When you go through and leave the country, you'll often just go up to the machine and camera and show your iris, your eye. But it's being used more extensively now. So for example, you walk in front of a panel at an airport in Singapore like Changi, and the panel reads your eye and knows that you're due to board flight BK121 at 11 o'clock, and will show you suddenly on the screen, your flight is now boarding. That's brilliant technology. Yeah. That sort of thing, I think, does make a massive difference. Obviously, there's issues around privacy and your iris being read, and what else they're capturing. But I think it's a major step forward that helps travel and tourism.
Exciting. So we've had a couple of questions, kind of both the same, from Harris and Harris Wallman and Jake Welford, kind of like, when is the best time to leave corporate life? Like, when would you advise people to take that jump? And then in the same way, how do you move from corporate role to independent? I think it's kind of a similar question.
Really good question. So when I was working at the BBC, and many journalists in the BBC feel this, you feel protected. It's a bit of a quango, a bit of a government, funded in effect by the license fee organization. So it's not private sector. and you feel very protected in that sort of environment. So when I took the decision to leave, I was really worried. It was a huge decision to take because I didn't know really what was in the outside world. I'd obviously interviewed lots of CEOs and chairmen, so I had lots of experience of working in a private sector environment, but it was a massive leap to take. And the advice I'd give everybody from that is be bold, and actually often life is better on the other side, actually. And you have to do, every time you make a decision or about to make a decision about your career, always write down on the back of an envelope the pros and cons, or in a notepad, the pros and cons, because that is the clearest way, and I've done it at every intersection of my life, that is the clearest way of working out which way you should go, because you'll find one side is longer than the other every single time. There are always either more pros to making that move than cons, or more cons than pros to doing it. And it's the clearest thing you can do. So I was nervous about making that decision of moving to the software company Misys at that point, but it's the best decision I ever took. I'm lucky enough to worked in amazing places. So all the career paths I've had have been fantastic. I haven't regretted any company I've worked for. And I think I've taken the view of reinvention. And this is the other thing I'd say to everyone. Think about reinventing yourself, certainly every 5 years. And by reinventing, I mean building your skills base. So taking the skills you've got and building on them, using them, building on them to slightly pivot to something else. Now, that might be pivoting your own business in a different way, or it might be pivoting your own career in a different way. But I've reinvented myself every 5 years. So from the BBC, I took my journalistic skills into the software company. In the software company, I combined my journalistic skills with learning about in-house PR. Then when I went to Eurostar, I took those in-house PR skills that I'd learned in the software company and built them at Eurostar further on a global basis. So taking my PR knowledge on a global scale, not just in the UK. And then from Eurostar to Virgin Atlantic, I wanted to take my PR skills learned in-house into a more global managerial role with managerial skills, which I learned at Virgin Atlantic. And then from Virgin Atlantic into the large PR firm I work with, I was then moving into a much more managerial role rather than just a pure PR role. So each time I've taken a bit of the ingredients of my career, if you like, and added to those ingredients all the way through. And I think that builds successful leaders.
Thank you. That's really, really interesting. I want to, because we've got obviously an audience of small business owners here, what I'd like to know, PR might not be the natural go-to kind of marketing tool that they would consider using as part of kind of growing their business. So how would you say that PR could help a small startup business?
Well, obviously, I'd say PR is vital to building your business. It was always Richard Branson, of course, who said if he was down to his last pound, he'd spend it on PR. But I think quite a few business leaders claim that expression as well. I'd say the reason why it's important is because you have to have visibility for your business. So what is the best visibility that you need for your business? Is it, is it along the lines of, is it along the lines of you as a personality wanting to be out there as a profile of you, or do you want your team to be out there, or do you want just your brand to be out there? And sometimes it's a combination of all of them. But the reason PR is important is because it's relatively cheap compared with other marketing methods. So it's certainly cheaper than placing lots of adverts, for example. PR buys editorial trust, and consumers believe what they read, usually in newspapers, magazines, etc. And it's best for you as a small business to start building up editorial exposure, which is both online and offline, so that people start to trust your brand. And that's, I think, the best thing you can do. And so that's why it's important, because it creates word of mouth. The best business tool you can have for winning more customers is word of mouth. And in my business, we turn over about 2 million a year. We employ 20 people. And, we're a business that relies a lot on word of mouth, and not just media exposure, but one client talking to another. And that can come a number of ways. You could do it through having a lunch or a dinner event or a breakfast event where you invite existing clients with potential new clients. And if you trust your existing clients enough, they will be brilliant at telling potential clients how good you are. So PR is defined in a number of ways, not just in the number of column inches you get, but also in terms of your clients using word of mouth to get you more exposure.
Thank you. That's great. And just kind of picking up on, I guess, social media, which is probably what the last kind of 8 to 10 years where it's really exploded and is exploding even more. How do you think that social media has changed the PR landscape?
Hugely. I mean, it's changed in terms of speed. And obviously, as PR professionals, we've adjusted to that pretty quickly. But a lot of companies have found that really difficult. So essentially, it's... do you mind if I just shut the window? Because it's getting quite loud here.
No problem. So you don't get this in a room, do you?
Sorry about that.
Right.
So I'm also, it's funny because I'm also self-isolating at the moment, having just come back from Malta on a business trip. And Test and Trace are obviously tracking me as they do, phoning every day. And the doorbell keeps going. And I keep thinking it's a Test and Trace person checking up to see I'm at home,
Right.
That's all happening at the same time. So, sorry, where were we, Joe? Sorry.
Social media changing the PR landscape. Yeah.
Yes. So it has, speed-wise, it's obviously made a massive difference, because depending on the business you run, you may need to react to something or comment on something that's come up. And social media actually can be the best way of doing it. So Twitter especially is very news heavy, news driven. If you've got a comment to make about something going on, then that's the best place to put it. Media might be following you, of course, on Twitter, so then they pick up what you're saying very quickly without you having to write a press release even. It depends what sector you're in, and you choose your social channel wisely based on what you're trying to promote. For example, if you're a florist, then you will use Instagram very effectively to showcase your products and post daily the best pictures you can. If you're a chocolate biscuit maker, then again, you might use Instagram more than other channels. Facebook you might use for networking more cleverly with existing customers. LinkedIn, I'd certainly recommend for building your networks and for getting people to get excited about your product. And again, for having an opinion. If you're in a sector like hospitality, where there's a lot of issues going on around opening hours, finding staff, making a profit, they're all issues you might want to comment on LinkedIn and get others engaging with you. Maybe like-minded other entrepreneurs who are in the same sector running their businesses. And then Twitter, as I say, you might use for commenting on a news issue or something like that. But beware, social media can get you into trouble too. And you got to be careful what you say, because some people will take offense or read your comment in the wrong way and then react, and then it create a Twitter storm. So it can be your best friend, but equally it can land you in hot water. Yeah. But of course, they're all free channels. And you as a business owner and a small business should take advantage of these free channels, because they're invaluable to building your exposure.
And we've had a question from Neil. Thank you. That's really, really helpful. And I will always tell people to consider what their business is and what social media platform they should focus on. So that's really good advice. Thank you. We've had a question from Neil Elton saying, what trends and insights are you finding since the UK opened up in terms of travel habits from members of the public?
Well, I wish travel was opening up as fast as that question intimates. It's not opening up as fast as we want, but yes, it is opening up. And in fact, various campaigns we've run, we've pushed for the opening of travel. like Save Our Summer, which we created in February. I don't know, we might show a little video in a minute, Joe.
Yeah, I'll show that in a minute. Yeah.
I'll come back to that in a minute. But the main insights, frankly, are very much that consumers want more space when they're traveling. So first of all, ideally, they want to be in their own bubble, in a car with their own friends or family, rather than on public transport. They want to travel to places that are on the coast or in countryside rather than in cities. And that's not good news at the moment for large hotels in London, for example, who are not only struggling with British visitors not wanting to go into a big hotel, but also struggling with the fact that tourists are not coming into the UK at the moment in their droves. Another insight is very much they want more privacy and space, as I say, because they don't want to share with lots of other people. They're nervous about being with hundreds or thousands of other people at the moment, whether you agree with that or not, because they're nervous. And then they are going off things like buffets, for example, overseas, and not wanting breakfast buffets. They want to be served by one person rather than sharing spoons and forks with other people. So there's little things like that that are going on. And dare I say it, there's more focus on short haul rather than long haul at the moment. Consumers want to be close to the UK, where they believe the healthcare infrastructure may be better in terms of them getting back here if there's a problem or they develop COVID, for example, whilst they're traveling. And then the final thing I'd say is a big switch, which is a good thing, to more sustainable travel, which is very much around maybe rather than doing 4 trips a year, they only want to do 2 because they don't want to use as much fuel on trips. They might make their trip longer and do 2 weeks away rather than 1 week away. So we're seeing some positive things, I would say, towards more sustainable travel, which is one good thing, certainly, to come out of the pandemic. Quickly on Save Our Summer, because it'll give you a chance to play the video, hopefully. I was part of a team that ran a campaign called Save Our Summer in February, which was a campaign, very much short-term, high-profile, high-impact campaign to persuade the Prime Minister to include reopening travel in his roadmap when he announced his roadmap on February the 22nd. And I'm pleased to say we did get him to do that. So if you roll the video.
Oh, the video. Yeah. Oh, hopefully if everybody can see this.
There you are.
It's now important, I think, for the government and the Prime Minister next Monday to set out this roadmap of how UK and overseas travel will be opening up. Government has to unlock, it has to start enabling travel to take place. Otherwise, there will be tens of thousands of job losses. It doesn't help for politicians from all parties to be saying, don't book a holiday. That is quite irresponsible because it's not protecting the economy.
Your pressure group wrote to the Prime Minister saying that May was a good time to unlock foreign travel, and you've pretty much got what you wanted.
Yes, it's to be welcomed, and clearly the government will be held to those dates.
So there you go. It gives you a flavour of what a short-term, high-impact campaign can do. And you know, we did achieve a reopening on the 17th of May, albeit a small one. But to the Prime Minister's credit, he stuck to it, and you know, we can claim some credit for that, despite the fact they're now trying to restrict travel a little more whilst they get the jab work done. But it gives you a flavour that there was no money that changed hands on that campaign. It's really important to say that. I think that was a pro bono campaign that anybody could do watching this, you know, on an urgent issue, if it's something that really affects your sector. And the strength of feeling you could see there with 900 firms signing up. We all felt so aggrieved and worried in a way in February about the impact on the sector. So it was successful.
And you know, you can tell your room, Paul, your background has been well used, very much so. I just want to say, because we're coming to a stop, I just wanted to say thank you so very much for your insight. You know, I really hope that you've given, if there's people on here who are possibly thinking of moving from kind of corporate life or wanting to start their own business, given some really good tips. Oh gosh, we've had the most insightful person Work Avenue has ever had on here. So, oh gosh, you really, that is high praise.
Very much. Honoured. Well, it's a pleasure. And you know, if anyone has any questions that they want to funnel to you, Joe, for me to try and answer, then I'd be happy to try and answer them another time. But yeah, it's been an honour talking to you, and thanks for listening. We
really appreciate your time, Paul. Thank you, and good luck, and please get us back travelling. We hope you'll help get us back travelling at some point.
See you all on the plane soon, I'm sure.
We hope so. And for those of you who want, we are now going to be going to our final networking, half an hour of networking for those who want. So see you there. Thank you, Paul.
Pleasure. Enjoy the session.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.